part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back, Hawkeye Nation, to another episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast, your daily podcast covering your Iowa Hawkeyes on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I am your host, Andrew Wade. Excited to be back for another episode today. And we are joined by a very special guest. We are joined by the head coach of the Iowa women's soccer team, David DiIanni. David, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I absolutely appreciate it. It is a pleasure to have you on. I appreciate you obviously getting back to me and whatnot. And the women's soccer team, I feel like people don't get a chance to watch them enough, so I wanted to make sure we covered the soccer team as much as possible, so I appreciate you coming on. Before we get into the Iowa soccer team, I want to talk about your journey, though, because kind of an interesting journey. I was doing some research, started out at the high school level, moved up to Grand Valley State, and then got to Iowa. What has that journey been like for you?
Well, it's been an eventful process, but an exciting process, to be honest. What's interesting about my career is I've only been a head coach. So most of my, except for, the very, very beginning of where I was maybe a JV high school coach, as an assistant, back in 1998. But most of my career has been a head coach. So it's been kind of a learning by mistakes, to be honest. It's been trial and error and trying to grasp new ideas and, what works for me and my coaching voice and, what's my philosophy. So all of it was kind of transitional and trial and error, use, keep, throw out. And it's been very exciting in that regard. And even at the age of 49, I feel like I'm still trying to develop who I am as a head coach at the Big Ten level, and that can be challenging because, as we know, it's a very, very strong conference in all sports. So, and I think the other part is I really, once I'm at an institution, I really try to develop, who I am. I try to develop the culture, and I don't change jobs an awful lot. And so it's been easy on my family to be able to integrate themselves into the community. And for me, the administration have at both schools in particular have been very, very patient and very excited about the process.
Absolutely. And I feel like the last couple of years, you've really been hitting your stride at Iowa, making a couple tournaments, which is super fantastic. 2 of the only 3 tournaments the women's soccer team has made in the history of Iowa women's soccer. So definitely hitting your stride there. Did you always want to be a coach?
I did. I think everybody, when they go to college and they're a student athlete, they envision having great success on the field and, going on and playing pro and whatnot. And early on for me, quite honestly, I thought I had a good career. I was at an NAI school that was very successful, but it was very obvious to me that I was a good soccer player, but not a great soccer player. And, my mind started, moving into, the hows and the whys and the tactics of the success as a team. And so it became a track that I started moving into. And then one of my major, my undergrad, was education. So, I talk a lot about teaching. You teach the game of soccer, and then, that's first and foremost. And then you coach the game. And so I think the elementary track, the high school track, and the education kind of lend itself to a different area, which was the soccer field. So I had always enjoyed that process. I enjoyed the development of players and development of people. And I think, whether you're in the education world or you're in the athletic world, they're very similar.
Absolutely. What was the track? Were you on the education track? What was the grade you were hoping to eventually teach if you were a teacher?
Well, I actually did teach. So when I came out of college, I was a high school coach for a long time in college for 4 years. And that same high school, private Catholic school, Jackson Lumen Christi, hired me as a teacher in the social science department. And so I coached varsity girls, and I taught I taught 6 classes. So really quite enjoyed that. Some of the best years I've ever had, actually, as a coach and a teacher. You see them every day and you shape lives in a different way.
Absolutely. My wife is a teacher, so I have a soft spot for teachers. She's no longer in the profession, but she was there for 5, 6 years, and it was one of the most enjoyable, one of the also most challenging professions. I think that people don't always realize. Super cool. How was that recruitment process to come to Iowa? You spent a lot of years at Grand Valley State, had a lot of success there. What did Iowa reach out to you? Was Iowa on your radar when the previous coach ended up going to Dartmouth? What was that process for you?
Well, yeah, I think first off, Grand Valley is such a unique school. It's size wise, it's the biggest school in the country for Division II. So, and all the departments there, athletic programs, they all have a chance to win national championship every year. So, when you're there and you have that as your pedestal, and that's what you're trying to win a national championship, or we had gotten the program to a position where all but 1 year we were in the Final Four. I think 8 of the last 9 years we were in the Final Four. There were a lot of opportunities for me to move on, but there were opportunities that maybe I didn't envision them to be different or better than what Grand Valley State. And I knew a lot about the Big Ten. We'd play Ohio State, Michigan State, play a lot of the Big Ten schools in the spring season. And so I was very familiar with the landscape in the Big Ten. And so I'd kind of always said, if I'm going to leave here, I want to leave to be challenged professionally at a higher level, and again, nothing against, a MAC school or Horizon level program, but I thought I was already doing that. So when Iowa did call and they had an opening, I knew Ron Rainey pretty well. And I'd always looked at the Iowa City and the University I'd never been, but I always looked at, hey, they don't have a men's program. So there could be something special about being the lone soccer program there. And I knew that they had, it was, I looked at it as being something dormant. Like Ron had done really well in 2013, but they had a good team, but I didn't see that as having a culture yet. I didn't see it as Iowa City having soccer fans. And the athletic department supporting it how I, really probably needed to be supported. So when they called and I was like, I'm not sure, maybe I'm not sure I want to come. And, Jane Meyer was like, just take the visit. I think you'll be surprised. And quite honestly, to her point, the people were fantastic. The Tiger Hawk is just a world renowned, emblem. Yeah. And the people in at the state of Iowa are just bleed black and gold, and that's not a knock against the Cyclones, but the reality is, you don't say, hey, go Cyclones in every airport. They say go Hawks. And that just took me over, and I thought it was a place I could raise my family. And I was so excited because that's what happens when we recruit. Every recruit that comes to Iowa City, they're like, I did not know this existed. And it just became a passion that I wanted to be part of.
That's super cool. I think for me, so I grew up in Iowa. I went to Drake University for undergrad, but I always knew I wanted to be an Iowa Hawkeye at some point. So I finally decided to take the plunge and got into, grad school and whatnot. So going there now, but always kind of was very interested in that. And my best friend, his dad has passed down the fandom to him. He goes to every game. I got season tickets. So I can definitely understand the bleeding, the blacking, and the gold. And it's pretty cool to hear you say that. You mentioned you wanted to be challenged in a different way. What has been the biggest challenge for you being the head coach of this women's soccer program?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question, because I think, coaches have an understanding of who they are, no matter what program you're in and what works for them. And, I think you have philosophies as to, how to build a culture, because you got to be comfortable in your own skin. So that part was, I think, relatively seamless. You have an idea of who's a good player, what are you looking for in terms of character, in terms of a prospective student athlete. I think for me, And it's much more difficult now than it was when I came in 2014. But the challenges were professionally and tactically. The day-to-day operations in terms of recruitment. It's a battle to get the best student athletes to come. You're battling against Northwestern, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois. At the SEC comes up a lot. It's a battle every day. It's got to be your lifestyle. What are you sell? What are you selling? What are you about? And you got to work on recruiting every day, just a little bit, or you get left behind. I think the other part is, the in-game preparation. And it's only gotten better. The Big Ten for women's soccer is really strong now. And this past year, we finished fourth, and we didn't even make the NCAA tournament which is insane. But from top to bottom, the coaches have changed. Investment in women's soccer has increased. So facilities are great now. Institutions want to win in our sport. So professionally, I was at a pretty high level. We're trying to win national championships every year at Grand Valley, and getting to the Final Four. And I look back now and go, man, I could have done so much better if I was a little bit better in-game preparation, or the national championship. I should have done this. I got caught a couple times in the Big Ten. I'm okay saying that, that I was not prepared to coach against who I coached for, against, but that's why I came here.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty fast learner. And the last 4 or 5 years, as we've gotten the players we need to get in this program to compete in the Big Ten, we've done pretty well.
Absolutely. So what do you look for in a player when you recruit them? So one of my buddies was recruited for college soccer, and he kind of mentioned that a coach he talked to said that they look for one or two special traits because there's so many good players out there. You want a team that can stand out in one or two specific things. What are you looking for when you're recruiting a player?
I think they fall into two categories. I think, first of all, character is really important. It's a challenge. There's a lot of adversity, specifically at this level of college athletics. It'd be great to say, hey, you came in, you were starter freshman year, and you're starter senior year. But the reality is you have adversity that you face. There's other people who want the same goals as you. And then you have to, your job is to be a student athlete first. You be a student first. You have to go to school. Those things are all very challenging. So high character, raised by good people, and hardworking is really important. I think the second part to that is having an understanding of who are you recruiting as a player and how do they fit into your system. Everybody has this, has a system, and, recruiting to those players in those systems is important. I could go and get any players. I could fill a roster very quickly, but as a front runner, do they like to press? Do they want to defend? Do they want to hunt the ball? Do they, are they athletic enough to be able to stretch the game? As midfielders, can they tackle? Are they technical? Are they creative? Are they courageous? So I think they have to fit into your system as well. I think it's got to be a bit more. It can't just be one size fits all. And then you really defining those characteristics to these potential student athletes. So because you don't want them to commit to the University of Iowa if they don't want to do some of those things that you're asking every day. So I think they come into a lot of, it's character based. Do they want to graduate from the University of Iowa? Do they want to take that experience seriously? And then, as soccer players, or, Lisa Bluter, if you can't shoot the three, you're not playing on Lisa Bluter's team. If you can't grind in the post with some post moves, you can't play for Jan Jensen, right? Like, everybody's got something. And I think ultimately what you've learned at the University of Iowa, if you want to be a Hawkeye student athlete, you got to want to develop and get better. Kirk, Lisa, Fran, Dave DiIanni, doesn't matter. You got to want to get better. We're gonna make you better because we can coach. And ultimately, that's what matters if you're going to come to Iowa City.
I love that. That's super awesome. So, how would you classify your preferred style of play? Is it more direct, or is it more possession based, or does it kind of change from game to game?
Yeah, I think it's really dependent on the players you have in your program. I want players that want to learn and that are open to getting better and can free think on their own a little bit. You're certainly going to give them a foundation how we want to play. We're going to be in your face. We're going to press defensively. We're going to be athletic. But in the end of the day, everybody has video. Everybody's well coached. And so your ability to adapt on the field, we don't have timeouts. We can't, I can't only coach from the sideline so much. So they've got to be able to adapt to what they see. And that starts with practice, and that starts with our teaching. So I would say it's a little bit of both. We've got to be good enough to be able to keep the ball. But when we're pressed, we want to be athletic enough to be able to go direct and punish people for playing that style. So I think a little bit of a hybrid, to be honest.
I like that. Yeah. And with college, obviously the substitution rules are a little bit different than the professional model. People can go in, they can come out. Do you prefer that substitution model, or would you rather have a more concrete, once you go out, you're out?
I think in the women's game and the men's game in college, I think it's important to have a little bit of freedom substitution wise. I think there's a lot that goes into that. You have more players that play. So you have more people that are more happy, and but the reality is, I think when you start talking about periodization, we just don't have enough time to be able to build our student athletes fitness wise. We have 12 days of preseason. We don't right now, and this might change, and I think it will change, but right now we don't have access to them in the summer. So for us to say, hey, we're going to run with 90-minute players with 4 substitutions, it's just not going to happen. It's just, you're going to have, we already have a little bit more freedom in substitutions, and we're still having probably too many injuries in all sports, not just soccer. So I believe that there will be a legislation change that we will have access to our players in July, a little bit similar to basketball. It's much needed. Volleyball is going to be along with that same ticket. And really it's driven by the student athletes saying we want access to our coaches more often, and we want to develop as players. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, completely agree. So by my count, when I looked at the roster, it looks like you're losing 3 kind of full-time starters from this past year's squad that went 12-6, Riley, Olivia, and Samantha. How do you go about replacing 3 starters on this squad, and what are your expectations going into next season?
Well, I think if you have a good culture and you recruit well, you hope that there's a next man up, right? Or next woman up. So we're in that position right now, trying to figure out, with our off season, who's developing, who's going to take it, change their role and take on more responsibility. And I think that will be really important. I think we have some players that maybe played a different role in the fall that are really really close to challenging for more responsibility. Kenzie Rowling, a Waverly, Iowa girl. I think she still breaks the record for, leading high school goals in the state of Iowa. She had a good year. Anybody who scores 6 goals is a good year in the Big Ten, but, had some physical challenges and got sick and just never could. It's hard, for a freshman to adapt that quickly. She's on fire right now. We have some grad transfers that are coming in next year in that position up top. And so it's my job to replenish the roster, and it's our players' jobs to be able to expand their role and walk through that door when the door is open.
Definitely. This keeps rolling right into the perfect seamless transitions here. But with what you're saying about what I wanted to ask next. So speaking of grad transfers, you landed Cassidy Formanek out of Houston. What was the impact of landing her as a grad student, someone who has significant experience playing high-level soccer? And how did you identify her as a transfer target?
Well, our portal is, one of the benefits to the COVID years. The portal is pretty heavy right now. And, a lot of people, females in particular, are using that COVID year to start the process, with master's classes, and Cassidy, first of all, has been an incredible addition. She's having an awesome off season right now already. And there's no substitution for a 22-year-old woman who's played a lot of minutes and in a high level. Mm-hmm. So how did we get her? Blair Quinn, one of my associate head coach, his career has made his way through the University of Houston. So he has coached her for a year or two before he came to the University of Iowa. So that was the first thing. He could vouch for her character, her work ethic, who she was as a person. And we had a need. We had a need to upgrade at center back. We needed to get more athletic at the back. Losing Olivia Hellwig and Alicia Ganif is a young center back who played a lot of minutes, but we didn't have enough depth. Sarah Wheaton has played a lot of minutes for 4 years there, so we need to manage her minutes. So Cassie is exactly what we thought she was. She's a leader. She's physically prepared to play at this level, and she's a good soccer player.
Love that. And so transitioning to just the Iowa team in general, what was it like winning that first NCAA game in Iowa history? And how did you keep your team motivated throughout a rough start to begin that season and know that there's still an opportunity that lies ahead? I mean, if we're being honest, that's pretty unprecedented to make that kind of a run.
Yeah, I think they've coined the word it was the story that no one thought you could write. I think the last 2 years has been a lot for everyone, with COVID and the pandemic, and certainly the beginning of that fall with the stoppages. And we had quite a number of student athletes that first summer, unfortunately, not able to train. And we had a lot of stoppages through the fall, and we just never got a rhythm. And we never got, and the biggest challenge was we had a great class of freshmen that were doing online classes that we thought were going to help us right away. And we just never got a rhythm. And early on, we struggled losing, creating a core of who we were as a team. We lost some games that we never would have lost, if later in the year, and we didn't lose later in the year. So about halfway through, we had, quite honestly, and this is a credit to our student athletes. They stayed bought in. We started getting a little bit more production from the freshmen who were very talented. Micah Ingles, Riley Fetty, Maggie Johnson, some really good players that just weren't ready, to play. And it was a Big Ten season only. We didn't have non-conference schedule, which usually you can use as a buildup. Mm-hmm. So we got thrown right into the Sharks water, and they weren't ready. So I remember this vividly. We lost to Minnesota at home, played Penn State on a Sunday, lost 1-0, really should have tied the game. And our team was like, we're doing everything you're asking, coach. And I'm like, you are, but we're not ready to win yet. And that's what I believe. I need more. This level needs more. And I could see they really should have said, we're done. And they didn't. They said, okay. They showed up the next day, and we just went on this run where we won, I think, 5 of the last 6 games. And still wasn't enough. We still were at the bottom. In a normal year, we would have missed the Big Ten season. But we went on that run, and that run just took off. And we went to Illinois. They had this big presentation for their new facility. We beat them. Then we played Minnesota, beat them. And then, what we did in Penn State was unreal, and, this was all with about 12 players. We didn't have a depth. We didn't have a bench. But our sport in particular, but athletics, is just what's so awe-inspiring about the NCAA tournament and the runs like what we made was its momentum, right? You feel feeling good about yourself. You get your hair sticks up on your arm, and you start, walk a bit taller. And that's what our team did. We just believed. And honestly, getting the NCAA game against Mercer, who the heck did we play in the first?
Yeah.
But the first NCAA win was unbelievable. And then, quite honestly, we should have beat UCLA. We were 1-0 up with 5 minutes left to go, but that's how you create culture, and that's how you create a foundation. And I'm just really proud of that group of women that stayed bought in when things were struggling.
Yeah, Campbell was the
Campbell. Oh my gosh, my friend was the coach there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I will say that run was amazing, and it was honestly the first collegiate soccer I'd ever watched. So I mean, I think that's pretty cool that what you all were doing. I think was resonating with everyone across the state and as Iowa Hawkeye fans, and it's something now I try to catch whenever I can. The game's going on. I'll be completely honest. I'm not the most soccer savvy human being, but I understand when you score, and that's good, and I understand a few things. So. It's been pretty cool to watch that growth, and then you turn it into this season, go 12-6. Now, what are the expectations for next season?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you being honest and transparent about that. I think that what was good about it is, we had it in here. Wrestling was, Tom Brands would text us, "Hey, we're watching." They picked up a recruit, Kenzie Rowling's boyfriend. It just kind of becomes a train, and of momentum, and you just. It doesn't matter what sport it is. You're just fighting for the Hawkeyes, right? You're cheering on the Hawkeyes. So I think for us, it's just important that we just don't fall off our core values. Our core values are being fit, working harder than everybody else, putting time in to develop as a player. And you can do that, right? When you have success, and sometimes you become a bit short-sighted and start cutting corners. And I think it's really important that you realize how you got there and how hard it was to get there. And it's hard to get there successful, but it's even easier to slip back into a bad culture and in a bad season. And I think for us, we just talk about that an awful lot. Is the investment has to be greater than the reward. And the reward is almost, it's almost like you're not shocked when you win because you know what you put into it. And I winning is not as important to me as it is as losing. Losing you can learn lessons from. Losing, like winning, should just be part of the process. It's the cherry on top. Oh, great, good, awesome. We expected to win. Now we move on. And for me, I'm a very big coach that invests in the process. And if you're cheating it every day, you're going to get caught. So for me, it's, we have a pretty young program right now. Our players are pretty young, so they're learning what the process is about. And it's hard. It's hard. The process is hard, but you can't cheat life. Can't cheat success.
It's life lessons, not just in soccer, but overall in life. Well, I have one last question for you, and then a few just kind of quick questions. So I appreciate your time, and if you need to go, just let me know. What is one thing you would like Iowa Hawkeye fans to know about the women's soccer team and women's college soccer in general?
Well, I think first, college soccer in general, I think it's an incredible sport that takes an awful lot of physical stamina and investment to accomplish and perform at the highest level. I think that in the end of the day, our sport is something that goes along with women's basketball and softball. That if the NCAA and if universities invest in it, fans follow. There's no doubt about that. And I think it's the most popular sport in the country. With not just on the men's side, but on the women's side, but in the world. And so it's a universal sport that I think everyone can go. Once every 4 years, you got the World Cup. Once every 4 years, you got the Olympics. So it's always something that you can go back and relate to. And families, are around televisions, no matter whether the intricate details or not. With regards to Hawkeye soccer, I think we will always be appreciative of the opportunity to put on the Tiger Hawk, the black and gold. We will always be a blue collar program that will grind for success. And I think it's easy to follow, and just like you said, in 2019, we weren't as talented as UCLA, but we were in that position because we were a team and a program that were merged as one. And I think you see that amongst our entire athletic department. They're led by great leaders. They're led by great coaches. Starts with Gary Barta and all the way down. But we get better and we invest in the process. and you better be ready for a fight. So that's what's exciting about our athletic department. That's exciting. What's exciting about all the programs within our athletic department.
It's pretty cool to see, and I think about like the field hockey and seeing the wrestling team and the soccer team and the basketball team, and everyone's there supporting all these teams. It's pretty cool to see the amount of support from an Iowa Hawkeye program perspective. So to Coach David DiIanni, I really appreciate your time today. I have a couple very, very lighthearted questions for you. So
perfect.
First off, do you like Casey's Pizza? And if so, Casey's or Come and Go Pizza?
Oh, great question. Casey's.
I love that. What's your favorite Casey's Pizza?
Everyone's going to say breakfast, but I actually just like the basic pepperoni, nice cheese. I like the sauce, actually.
I'm 100% the same. Breakfast pizza is not my jam. It's the pepperoni. Honestly, a day old Casey's Pizza. Oh man, like I'm on a road and it just tastes so good. All right. Favorite restaurant in Iowa City?
Oh, that's a great question. I love Chop House. I think the Chop House. They got a great beer wall. They got great steaks, great chickens, good sandwiches. I've eaten there a lot. Second one would be Stella's.
Okay. And what's your go-to beer?
I like a Kona. I like a Kona Wave. A little bit of fruity. And then probably the second one would be something from Grand Rapids or Kalamazoo because I spent so much time there. Bell's, something from Bell's.
Okay, nice. I always have to ask this question. My best friend, he loves one of my best friends. He loves soccer, and he always asks me to ask this question: do you like pineapple on your pizza?
I do.
Okay.
I'm Canadian, so I've got to go with I don't often get it, but I don't mind it at all.
Okay. And final question for you: have you seen Ted Lasso, and do you like Ted Lasso?
Oh, I'm a big Ted Lasso fan.
Yeah.
Ted Lasso fan. I think it's a great show. I think that it's comedic. Great actors, actresses. I can't wait. I binged on it. I can't wait for another season come out.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most impressive shows ever created. It's hilarious. It also has really nice, talks about a lot of really deep things, but does it in a way that people can see it and understand it and comprehend it, but also leave and be understanding about it without being overly upset, I guess is the best way to put it. So
yeah, a lot of great life lessons, quite honestly, that that are woven in there to a soccer program, but are really just about living life, right? And being successful and being a good person. Ultimately, it's about being a good human being.
Yeah, someone was telling me the other day I was doing something, I was upset, and like, be a goldfish, Andrew. I was like, all right, got you. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it.
Well, Coach DiIanni, I really appreciate your time. It has meant the world for me to be able to chat with you. I'm really excited for next year's team and the season we'll be watching. And for all of you fans out there, I highly recommend checking out getting Big Ten Plus so you can check out all the Iowa women's soccer games that aren't on the Big Ten channel. Any last words from you, Coach DiIanni?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about our athletic department and our program and truly just the Hawkeye Nation.
Absolutely. As always, Hawkeye Nation, appreciate you all tuning in. Have a fantastic day.